Welcome, everybody, to episode 21 of the Arch City Poker Podcast. My name is Tony. Alongside Nick, we own, operate, and run ArchCityPoker.com. Nick, how are we doing today, sir?
Doing great. Excited to be here.
Awesome. If you didn't catch last week's episode, go ahead and check out our YouTube channel. And if you're brand new to ArchCityPoker.com, head on over to the link below, and you're going to see a website chock full of No Limit Texas Hold'em and Pot Limit Omaha content for you to consume if you're trying to develop your poker game, whether it's Hold'em or PLO. So, Nick, today we're going to be talking about a topic that I think a lot of people dabble in. I think when big tournament series come around, or if you ever told your friends or family that you maybe play poker, and they're like, "Are you going to play in the World Series of Poker?" And you're like, "Well, I play cash games," and they're kind of like, oh, almost like they're disheartened. So, Nick, there's a big difference between cash game players and tournament players, and oftentimes in a card room, I'll see dominant cash game players try to take a stab, or they'll play in a random tournament here or there, just because they like it, not because they're particularly skilled in it. Tournaments come in a variety of formats. Some are considered to be good, some are bad, and Nick, I know I have my preferences when it comes to tournament structure, but local card rooms, card clubs, casinos, a lot of them run daily tournaments, and then sometimes there's these larger promotional tournaments. Is there a specific type of tournament format that you like the most or would gravitate towards, or perhaps some that you don't like?
Usually the bigger events, if you will, like the mid to higher level events are, they're going to have like a structure where you have essentially like longer levels, kind of like the simplest way I can put it for most people. There's just going to be more room to play more poker, if you will. I think when you start getting into like turbos and stuff like that, going to be higher variance. I mean, there's still going to be obviously a skill edge to those for guys that know how to navigate them as the stacks really start to shrink like in an expedited manner. But yeah, I mean, anytime I've ever played, I've honestly preferred, tournaments that have, obviously, I think like everybody would hope, bigger guarantees, more up top, and I think just longer levels to play more poker.
Yeah, I think that's right. I know that our local card room has like a lot of dailies, but the blind level is maybe 15 or 20 minutes. It's pretty small. And if you're somebody who likes to dabble in tournaments, but you don't frequent them, they're not your standard, they're not your specialty, I'd recommend you hop into things that are at least a 30-minute blind level, because you need to factor in dealers might be a little slower, the players might be taking longer to act, and your goal would be to get as many hands in as you can, because hopefully the tournament that you're participating in, you have a larger skill edge over the rest of the competition. At least, Nick, that's the kind of the goal. And if you're adopting a lot of the Arch City Poker fundamentals, you can apply a lot of those within a tournament. And Nick, if somebody is primarily a cash game player and they're taking shots in random tournaments, why do you think that they may or may not have such a hard time during the later stages of the tournament if they're primarily a cash game player and maybe have a big tournament and they just want to take a stab at it?
Stack depth, just not being familiar with blinds and antes going up, and that's going to dictate a lot of your aggression level, being able to navigate a table with varying stack sizes, if you will, because you might have a situation where you're effectively 50 bigs deep, and then you might have a situation where you're 15 bigs effective. Cash games, they're a little more stagnant. I mean, you're typically somewhere between 100 and 200 bigs, and not a whole lot changes as far as that goes. But with tournaments, yeah, as the antes and blinds increase, you have many different situations that arise throughout the tournament, and a lot of players I think a lot of the cash players are a little unfamiliar with that, and how I think like in a cash game, they can get a little, I don't know if lazy is the right word, but you're able to sit back and you could wait. I think more guys should take more spots and go with them if they have a skill edge. But I think when they get into a tournament, they don't keep their foot on the gas pedal, and there's a lot of spots where like they're supposed to be playing way more aggressively pre-flop or defending more frequently or more aggressively and not playing, I think, honestly, even aggressively enough as an exploit post-flop as well. So, yeah, I think it's just when those blinds and antes rise, I think that's and those stacks start to shrink down to between 25 and 50 bigs. It's just a whole different world, and so it makes for some trouble for some cash-only players.
Yeah, I think I would even fall into that category, Nick. I think when the blind levels are small, relatively speaking, and I feel, and I'm like I think I consider myself to be a pretty darn good cash game player. So in those early stages of a tournament, I feel pretty godly. I really know where everybody's at. Nobody's running any ridiculous lines. The forced variance isn't quite there yet because stack depths are so big. Nobody's feeling like they have to take sixes and just run with it. But as that tournament gets into the later stages and stacks become much shallower as far as how many big blinds are in everybody's stack, and you're forced to play hands that as a cash game player, they're a little unconventional for you to play with, right? You're defending your big blind much more often. And in a cash game, you're really not doing that a whole heck of a lot unless there's a very specific reason that you need to. So if you get a hand like, I don't know, 6-10 suited in the big blind, you kind of have to, consider your options much more than as if you were in like a cash game or even 7-9 offsuit, or like hands that are in a cash game perspective, things that I'm not trying to play short stack poker out of position with these types of hands. In a tournament, I might have to take a line that gets a little bit more aggressive with more speculative hands. So yeah, Nick, I think if somebody is primarily a cash game player and they're stepping into tournaments, I think there's a large window of opportunity to really shift your strategy. And even if the beginning stages of a tournament feel much more like a cash game. Nick, when I have talked to a lot of players that, they prioritize cash games as maybe like their specialty, but they do like to play in tournaments. When I think about like poker bankrolls, like we talked a little bit about it on this channel, and when you have a cash game bankroll, we talked about a bunch of different numbers that we think that players should have. It could be 10 buy-ins, 15, 20 buy-ins for live low stakes poker. And I would say I would probably err on the side closer to, obviously, the more buy-ins you have, the safer you're more rolled for the games you're playing in. But with tournaments, that's a little bit different. And I would argue that a cash game player does not have a tournament bankroll and a cash game bankroll. It's probably just a poker bankroll. So if somebody is trying to play in a tournament, they might feel as if they have to shoot the tournament once, twice, if it's a really good formatted tournament, a handful of times. How should somebody consider their bankroll into a tournament kind of like structure? Or what are the differences between managing a cash game poker bankroll and a tournament poker bankroll?
I mean, with tournaments, they're going to be higher variance. I think you would just like to have maybe a little more behind if you're including tournaments into, what you're going to play, whether it's upcoming recent event or, like events that are soon to happen, or if you're planning on events throughout the year. So I would save up for that, or I would just plan for more variance. I mean, again, like with bankroll, I think the big thing is for like 99% of you guys, if you have careers or jobs, you don't have to worry about that as much. But if it's something like where you have money on the side for poker and you're pretty strict about that, or you want to have a bankroll, then yeah, I just think you need to, account for more variance with tournaments. Like general rule of thumb is if you're in a field where you don't, I guess, have like a significant edge, like cashing 20% of the time is pretty darn good. If you have a significant edge, maybe you would think maybe a little bit more than that, but not a whole lot more. From what I understand from the people in the industry that I know that play mostly tournaments. So I think it's just, you just need to account for more variance with those, but I wouldn't worry too much about bankroll if you have like a steady career job and you've got money come in, like it shouldn't really matter all that much then. Yeah,
that makes sense. I would say, similarly, I would say most people are not full-time poker professionals. They don't have poker as their primary source of income, and they just shoot tournaments after a good cash game win, or maybe they're feeling in the zone, they want to take a shot. I would just default that if somebody really enjoys playing a lot of tournaments, I would say you would want to increase that poker bankroll size just because tournaments historically are more volatile. And that's not to say there aren't very volatile cash game players or cash games, but a tournament more or less, forces variance because it's forcing substandard hands to go head to head because the blinds are just so big and your stack sizes get so small. So it's more forced variance versus like in a cash game, I can almost identify the variance before it happens. And sometimes I can get away from it. Sometimes I can't because I'm who I am. And sometimes I'm like, you better show me the nuts. Yep, you have the nuts. Okay. So yeah, I would say someone would just want to increase their poker bankroll overall. Nick, we talked about like maybe cash game players struggling when they go into tournaments. How would you imagine tournament players lack adjusting to cash games? Have you experienced that or seen that at all?
Sure. Yeah, I think for guys that like mainly shoot tournaments, if they don't have like a ton of experience with especially like deeper stack cash games, then they can run into some problems there because that's where like poker becomes much more complex. And I think the elite players, there's more creativity needed with like a lot of like successful double or mainly like triple barrels. I mean, the bottom line is, guys, like whether like you're somebody that plays a lot of tournaments and not as much cash, or if you play mostly cash and not as many tournaments, I think the big thing is if you can understand what you're supposed to generally be doing pre-flop based on stack depth, or like we always say like who's mostly going to end up in a situation with you post-flop. And like in a tournament, a lot of times it is much more often like the commonly thought of like poker situations, like the button versus big blind, button versus cutoff, small blind versus big blind. That's a huge one that we didn't mention, that like cash players struggle mightily, in my opinion, small blind versus big blind, because there is no chopping in tournaments. So that's one that if you're a cash player, like brushing up on that. But if you're coming over to a cash game from a tournament, I mean, again, like if you can do it pretty well pre-flop and then range your opponents, understand like how likely pre-flop ranges hit flop textures, like you'll be in a pretty good spot. Like you'll have some kind of edge. But yeah, Tony, I think for the tournament guys, it's typically, I see that there's a lack of, I think, creativity. Like, and sometimes I think there's a little uncomfortability when stacks are threatened when they get 200 plus big blinds deep, because like they don't really, like that doesn't really happen as often in tournaments. And I actually think that's a funny thing going back then to the tournament, is like in the early stages of the tournaments, guys don't, I think I fell victim to this a lot before, when I was playing a little bit more of those, that I would think like, well, it's early stages, like we're just looking to not make a lot of mistakes here. Like we don't need to probably accumulate a whole lot. But that's when people think like that, like it's a perfect spot to start accumulating and be able to use your edge as a cash game player. So I think it's yeah, there's a lot back and forth, Tony, where like guys will struggle, but I think it's the stack depth is and the fact that in cash games that it's stagnant for the most part, and then in tournaments it's always moving and shrinking. Like that's the two biggest like macro problems for both players, going back and forth between the variants.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I would say every time I'm in a cash game with a tournament player, I think it's pretty easy to tell because they're just playing way too many hands. And usually I see it the most when either they bust and they're maybe getting to they're waiting to refire, or they get to a tournament early, trying to late reg, and they want to sit into cash, or they maybe fired a bunch of bullets and it didn't work out, and now they think that they're going to come to a 1-2, 1-3, 2-5 table, and they're going to earn back the income that they lost. And again, that's being very results oriented. But in a tournament, I would say people are more results oriented than cash game players, just because they are joining for the result of the tournament. Now, results oriented play is different in these different contexts, but I have historically seen that tournament players, by and large, much more aggressive, trying to play a lot of hands. They're aggressive on static and dynamic boards. It really doesn't matter. And they're just going for it. And that's just a big difference that I see. And when tournament players aren't properly accustomed to a cash game and they sit down at a table, Nick, that maybe you or I are sitting at, I don't think it's a poor situation. It's a poor decision to be a specialist in a specific game and then to go into another game that you're maybe a little bit ill-equipped for. even if you're just trying to pass the time. But at Arch City Poker, if you wanted to get better at cash games while you're waiting for your tournaments, that might be an opportunity for you as well. So, Nick, we brought it up a little bit and talked about variance. Yes, there's variance in cash games. There's specific players that just have variance tattooed on their chest and they're just ready to go. When it comes to tournament poker, I would argue that the lifestyle of like someone who plays tournaments full time is quite stressful because you have to deal with an increased level of variance within the tournaments. And Nick, from your experience in playing these tournaments, where does that additional variance in the tournament come from? And what have you seen players, how do they reacted to it? Do they embrace it? Do they get really irritated? Does that impact how they play subsequent hands? What has the variance been like in tournaments that maybe you've experienced?
I would say the majority of people that grind tournaments, I think, kind of almost like get used to it. Like they're numb to the fact that like they're there having to grind for a long day or multiple days, if you will. I do think a lack of it's weird because like I think the vast majority of the time in almost every spot that I see, recreational tournament players aren't aggressive enough. But
Mhm.
then there's but then there are situations where like this is where it gets kind of like strange. It sounds like I'm contradicting myself, but like I see a lot of situations where I think because they're just not familiar with what should be happening in like especially like getting into like the late mid stages, there's a lot of punting if they aren't just sitting and waiting for the bubble, which is like what the vast majority of them do. So that's kind of like, I guess to answer the question as far as what I see in game, as far as it sounded, correct me if I'm wrong, you're kind of asking about like lifestyle too. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there's just more variance. Like the tournament kind of inherently has generated variance, like forced positions that make people play in uncomfortable
Mhm.
situations. In addition to that, the forced variance, and we can probably mold in like the psychology of like a tournament where cash game players, you can exhibit maybe more patience and more discipline. In a tournament, it feels more like a pressure cooker or like you're trying to survive from hand to hand, or you're getting close to the bubble and like you don't want to get out before that happens. So there's a lot of different types of variance between cash games and tournaments. And like, what do you feel like when you're playing in a cash game or tournament? Like, you feel the variance shift, or if you've watched players play, how have they reacted to like that tournament variance that is like a pressure cooker?
I think it's probably just more extreme with tournaments. Like it's more exaggerated, if you will. I mean, the big thing is like this isn't exactly answering the question, but I was kind of thinking about it in this from this perspective. Like who if I took a poker player just in general and are they more likely to be a profitable or successful tournament player, or are they more likely to be a profitable or successful cash player? I would say just based on what we all generally know about human nature, and how irrational and incorrect humans are regarding risk reward, um, and then how they handle the emotions of being results oriented and losing and winning. I think that being a cash player and being a profitable one is actually an easier venture than being a tournament player, because I
Yeah.
think the overall, like you mentioned, Tony, like the macro variance, and then there's like the micro variance within the game, if that makes sense, guys. But like, I think, I mean, I personally do know guys that like grind tournament circuits and they're traveling for them. And it can be an exciting lifestyle, especially if you're younger, if you're single, and even if you're a recreational player and you just travel a little bit locally, or maybe you do travel out or within the continental U.S. or take some shots in some events. Like it can be a lot of fun. It's nice. It's fun to do that. But I definitely think that all the things we've mentioned up to this point, like yeah, needing more money just in general, like if we're just talking bankroll, but like just needing more money for travel expenses. If you do go through, if you are even playing really well and you go through like a downswing in tournaments, like I mean, that's like those add up. And I think that with cash games, like there's room for players, whether they're incorrectly patient or not, there's there's room for them to be lazier. Like there's room to sit back and wait, or kind of in a way like control the variance a little bit. And I'm not saying they should do that. I'm not telling you guys like you should sit there and be like, well, I've been going through some downswings or some negative variance, so like I'm gonna play really tight. I'm just gonna play mostly cutoff or button, or I'm just gonna kind of wait and book some winning sessions. Like I think that's you can do that and like you can control that more than you can in a tournament. Because a tournament there it's being forced down your throat. Like your stack is shrinking unless you are, I mean, actively accumulating chips every level, like trying to, I mean, put the foot pedal or put your foot on the gas pedal and really taking it to your opponent. So yeah, there's definitely, I think, just a more exaggerated variance across the spectrum with tournaments. And that's why, like, I don't have as much tournament experience, not even close compared to my cash experience, but it's why I have a respect for the guys that do grind tournaments, whether you're recreational and then especially if you are a professional, like it's it's definitely not easy. Like the higher variance, like you definitely need mental fortitude to be able to handle that. And being able to handle just cash variance is one thing, but I definitely think with the more extreme side of that with tournaments, it's yeah, credit to the guys that do that for sure.
Yeah, I would say you need to have even more mental fortitude for tournaments than you do in a cash game. I know
Yeah.
because with tournaments, you're playing for longer. You might be sharp for the first 5, 6 hours of a tournament, but then you start getting into maybe more of robotic mode and you start just doing things because you think you're supposed to versus doing them because of like specific identified reasons at the table. So you have that aspect of it. But Nick, I think that's also why people they late register for a tournament. They maybe skip the first 4 or 5 levels because the blinds are so small and maybe it's just too mentally taxing to just sit there for 4 hours for, I mean, there could be some action to be had, but more often than not, you are just kind of picking up small pots here or there. But Nick, when we talked about it a little bit, but like when a cash game player goes into a downswing, that might at a lot, and we're talking like live low stakes downswing. I mean, cash game players can go through downswings that are a week, couple weeks, maybe a month. Maybe if I say months, I mean, that's probably a pretty long one if they're playing regularly. But for tournaments, is it the same thing, would you say? Or because tournaments are more spread out, it feels as if like the months ideology of like how long a downswing can go into tournament can just be an extended period of time. Have you seen that to be the case? Or would you say that downswings are maybe still more similar if they're shooting tournaments often enough?
No, I think common sense would say that with tournaments, just because, like you said, they are typically spaced out a little more. I mean, if you're traveling the circuit, like maybe you are hitting them up like weekly as far as like over weekends and such, or maybe you're in a place for like a series for a week. But I I think that again, like if you're cashing like a fifth of the time, that's pretty darn good. But if you go through like a downswing, I mean, it could be a while before you do cash. And what's that mean? Like, are you just min cashing? Are you somebody that is playing very well, very aggressively, properly, and making a lot more runs at final tables? Or are you somebody that just seems to like kind of sputter after you get past the bubble? Like, there's a big difference with that. There's a huge difference with that. So yeah, Tony, I mean, I'll be candid. Like, um, I don't think I have enough experience or am qualified enough to probably give like the greatest answer for that question. But I think just logically, like it's not going to be exactly like it's not going to be similar. Like I think it's definitely going
Yeah.
to be more extreme or could last longer with tournaments for sure.
Yeah, I think too, I think that's right. I think the A would be longer because the way the good tournaments are spread out. I mean, they can be firing $1,000 turbos every day, and I'm sure they can burn through getting through a downswing pretty quickly. But if they're playing in tournaments that are, quote unquote worthwhile, 30K and above, maybe the blind levels are 30 minutes or better. Maybe good dealers, because I personally prefer like little things like automatic shufflers versus dealers hand shuffling. I like an automatic shuffler because it gets the game moving just a little bit faster, and I want to see more hands when I'm playing in a tournament. So you brought up some really good points, Nick. And when it comes to tournament play, I've always wondered, and I know you may not have the perfect answer for this one as well, but if somebody wanted to do this for a living, one person wanted to play, let's pretend live low stakes up to like 2.5, maybe splashing at 5.10. and there's a tournament player that's playing maybe 15K, 30Ks for the most part, then like shooting big tournaments every once in a while. Do you think that a cash game player's hourly would be more profitable than the tournament player trying to bank a big score? Now, and again, this is from like your experience with maybe people that you know that shoot tournaments often and regularly and frequently. You can probably. It's also kind of hard because your personal cash game hourly is different than the humans, the average person's. So that might be a little different too. But yeah, what do you think? Just kind of generally speaking, the big score versus the cash game hourly.
You know, I think the best way that I can answer it, and maybe the only way I can answer it right now, it might be something that we address in the future again, guys, but I would say I think the ceiling is higher for somebody that's playing more tournaments. And that might seem like obvious, but I think like your ROI could be higher with tournaments if you are truly a really good poker player and like you have a great edge against the majority of tournament fields that you're playing against. Um, Cash, there's probably going to be more consistency there. So I could see there being like years where your hourly is higher when you're tracking both. Tournaments, I people don't really like those guys don't really track it hourly. It is more like ROI or like percentage. So it is tough to say, but I think that your the ceiling of like you said win rate is higher with tournaments because like if you are really good and you do spike one, you could win more in those, couple days than you win potentially in a whole year playing cash. And
Right.
and you don't have to do like I mean, you don't have to do that every year to like make up for or cover the cash wins or whatever. So it is a little tough to say. And I think that for me personally, like I think the best players probably mix both. I think it's healthy to mix both. Like it gives you an opportunity to I think appreciate kind of both variants because I think tournament and cash players will. So it's interesting. Like you'd think we're all poker players, but some of them do kind of bicker back and forth about who are the better players between the tournament and cash players and what is the better route to take. And I think it's healthy to do both. Like I mean, I think it makes you a better player to understand the nuances of both cash and tournament.
Yeah, I that's a really good point too. Boy, I don't know if I would even if I know somebody who's extremely good in cash games and then somebody who's also a crusher in tournaments. I mean, I could probably pick out. I mean, the list is not very long. I guess I should say because I know some people that are very good in both, but I would say that it's usually one or the other. Somebody that prioritizes tournament play versus cash game play. But I just always I felt like sometimes that tournaments are like slot machines where they just put a ton of money in and then they're just looking to bank like a good jackpot. And they're just hoping that that jackpot is bigger than the money that it took to get it. So it's kind of how tournaments work in a kind of degrading way in my head sometimes, but I also partake in tournaments. So here I am. Um,
Well,
so
yeah, I think the big thing to make clear is that like so you're kind of saying like if you're a if we're talking about like recreational players and they're not really putting a lot of work into their games, then the allure of like the bigger score is there. And I get
yeah,
that. And it's but on the same time at the same side of the coin there, I guess you could say that there is more degeneracy with that. Like it's like, oh, I'm just gonna put this buy-in in and just spin it and see what happens. And that's cool. Like that's the beauty of poker is like anybody can win a tournament. Like no offense, Chris Moneymaker. If you're watching this, I played with you. I don't think you're a great cash player, but you did win the main event. And so it just shows though that like in all seriousness, I think tournaments they're fun for people because like there's the drama of blinds and A's are going up. Like, oh my gosh, we're getting to the bubble. Oh my gosh, we're in the cash. Like there's a lot of adrenaline and fun that comes with it. And then with cash, it's like I said, a little more stagnant. But I think some players also prefer that and the ability to sit and socialize a little more and feel like the adrenaline or the fight or flight's not always pumping because of blinds and A's going up and you can get up from the table whenever you want, not have to be at the mercy of breaks or dinner breaks or whatever. So like there's a lot of positive and negatives with you guys that are choosing one or the other. And if you like tournaments and you like the allure of the big score, I get it. As a poker player, I would love to, I think like the allure of banking a tournament is obviously great. But
Hmm.
then on the flip side of it, I think that there's a lot of brilliance from really good players with deep stack cash games, and there's a lot of complexity to it. And I think I've been asked, Tony, a million times, like, do I think cash players are better than is a really good cash player than a really good tournament player? And I just think that I think appreciating both for what they can or what they're able to do in either variant is the right answer. Like I think that they're so different from each other, and especially as the tournament progresses. Like I think that, and like you mentioned, if there's a player that's really good at both, then they're likely just. I mean, there's a very good poker player. They know how to range their opponents. They understand how ranges interact with boards. They understand when and how and why to apply pressure. Like, um, I think if you're honestly just not very good at one or the other, then like you're probably just you're probably overestimating your skill level or your understanding of theory to begin with. But you just probably just need to brush up a little bit on the other variant and just get more reps in. And before long, you're probably pretty sufficient in that one too. It's just like if you're learning an actual new variant of poker, not we're not talking just no limit cash or tournaments, but if you're talking PLO, if you're talking, if you have access to mixed games, like it's the same thing. Like there's guys that are excellent at certain variants within like a mixed game, but they might be weaker in another one. And but some guys are just really they just are good hand readers. They just understand where their opponent is, and then they just play max exploitative poker. And that's the way that I would go about it, no matter what I was doing, until it was proven to me that I needed to adjust. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think for tournaments, the highs are higher and the lows are lower than like having a good cash game session. Like the cash, the highs I get now from a cash game are like running really good lines or picking off lines that didn't make sense where I was able to identify it. Those are my highs now versus like winning a hand. But it's the same thing. I'm sure people can tell you a story and like tournament players will highlight how they had bad beats or got sucked out on or whatever happened to knock them out of a tournament that they had a skill edge over. And it's cash games. It's the same thing. People oftentimes the common live low stakes players, I had aces. We went all in. I lost against deuce seven because the board was deuce seven or whatever the case is. So you kind of see it from both ends. And one thing I always kind of found interesting is if somebody was like, okay, I love tournaments more than cash games, and I'm debating on whether or not I want to like make this a full time or I want to like take the pathway and elevate my skill level and I want to be a better player and that kind of stuff. What style of game, whether it's tournament or cash game, do you think maybe fits somebody's personal life better? So I know for myself, married with two kids, pretty hard to be able to take an entire weekend and play a really like a 2-day tournament. Maybe one day is a flight, the second day is a flight. Pretty tough on the family. And maybe, yeah, I'm sure that might be okay every once in a while. But tournaments by and large, even the ones that are one day, can take 8, 9, 10 hours often than not, especially if you're gonna cash, if you're gonna win. With cash games, it's a little bit different. But Nick, if somebody enjoyed tournaments more, perhaps somebody enjoyed cash games more, what type of game do you think is a better fit for somebody's personal life? Like the income stability versus like the big scores, like cash games versus tournament play, or perhaps that lifestyle just might be so jarring between the two. How does someone figure out what they want to do?
I mean, I think it depends on the individual and what they got going on. I mean, like you said, if you got kids and you're married, then I think cash games or turbos are probably the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Every now and then you might be able to get an opportunity on a weekend to play something local, or maybe you're able to get away and go to another city or town and play in a series for a few days or something, or maybe longer. But then again, like on the other side of it, if you are somebody that is single or you just don't have the obligations or responsibilities, and then obviously you probably have the free time to take on like a week long series or go to Vegas during the World Series or go to Cherokee or go down to Florida or whatever. I mean, anywhere really. So, um, yeah, Tone. I mean, like you said, I think it depends on the individual and how much like the amount of responsibilities they have, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not kidding. I think everybody dreams and would love to be a tournament player just because it is in some ways more exciting, right? Every day you wake up, just like the idea of opportunity of the big score is infectious. Like when I play cash games, I'm never getting up to like, ooh, we're gonna win 2 buy-ins today. Ho ho. Like, but if it's a 500K, $1 million guaranteed tournament, it's like that's life-changing money if you can bank the final table and maybe place 1 or 2 there. So Nick, the final question I want to ask, probably the most important question I'm ever going to ask you. Are you ever going to fire the main in the World Series of Poker? That $10,000 entry
Oh, I
tournament
know which
fee?
one. I mean, it's funny when I first started playing. Uh, well, when I first like really got into poker was because of Moneymaker. Like most people that are around my age or our age, Tony. And I remember that little twang from that intro music when those episodes would start up. That was yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That was pretty good. I think it was the fall of '03, and after they completed it in the summer, and I was I was hooked, and I loved it. I loved it. I still love the old clips. I love the old graphics. I don't think he knows what the hell he's talking about, but like I love hearing Norman Chad like do it. And so I it's funny because I consider myself a cash specialist. And but like my first love and like in when I was younger, my some actually I'll be honest, like the most fun I still have ever had playing poker was my uncle used to have he used to host a every other Friday night. It was essentially like 7:30 turbo, and we play. I think it was like maybe 20-minute level starting out for the first like 4 or so, and that would go to maybe 15 or maybe it was vice versa. I don't remember, but basically it would run from like 7:30 p.m. till maybe like midnight, and it was just guys hanging out in the basement just playing poker. And I started doing that when I was like 11 or 12, and I was playing with these guys that are around like our age now. And I played in that game all the way through like kind of early college, and it broke off because those guys all either like had families or they just got busy with life. And but then like I said, as I started playing in those games, and then Moneymaker came along, and then you had like Poker After Dark and High Stakes Poker, and you had all those faces, and then you got like clips from like online stuff from Poker Stars with like Dwan and Galfon, and that's when I got hooked in the cash games. And so I think back then, to answer the question, like I thought, oh yeah, the main event would be amazing to play in, and like as I got into the profession and I realized like I love cash games, and I'd shoot tournaments every now and then, but not traveling as much. Like, I never thought about it much. Like I've been out during the series. I think one day, like obviously, I'll play the main, and if I, um, maybe if I do well in more tournaments, I'll get hooked to do more of those. But yeah, I mean, I think every poker player, I think you'd be lying if you said you didn't want to play in the main at some point, I guess. Is it like something that's like an absolute bucket list item for me compared to like others? No, I'll be candid about that. Like my, I'm weird. Like my bucket list would be playing like $1 million high stakes games in Macau and China or something, or like something like that. But that's just more like where I would be with it. But no, I get the allure of the main event, and even like as we're recording now, I see like the Triton series going on with like all those high rollers that are just, if you guys want to watch like incredible high level, sometimes yeah, a lot of GTO, but like really high level poker, like those Triton series episodes and clips, like those guys are incredible. Like they're best of the best players, especially for like like the tournament variant, if you will. So yeah, Tone, maybe one day soon enough the main event will be calling.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that'd be pretty fun. I would say if I ever got to a point in my life where firing that thing and then losing the buy-in wouldn't like jar me. Like I think I mean, I can afford to play in it, but I don't obviously expect myself to win, especially over 5 12-hour days or whatever the heck it is. And if I ever got to a
7
point where,
recently.
yeah, if I ever got to a point where I could fire that thing, lose it, and like I don't feel that loss at all, yeah, I'll fire it. But as of right now, I can't just like pitch 10K off and just pretend like it was nothing. Maybe one day I can, but
Well, it's funny because the main event is actually, I mean, you could like satellite into it or some way, shape, or form, but like the main event's actually arguably the easiest field you would ever play in too, just because like
I
it
know.
brings in everybody and but it is a grind and it's I know guys that have gone deep in it, like personally, and it's really cool when it happens because it's like obviously the main event.
Well,
But yeah,
our friend that moved to Vegas to play made a pretty run deep to. Oh, I thought he made to day 4 or 5 actually.
yeah, I had action on a guy. I won't say his name because I don't. I mean, it wouldn't matter. But I had a little bit of. I had a piece of a guy that finished. I think he was like 36th, and
Oh,
he did really well. Yeah,
yeah, I'd say so. That'd be the dream.
yeah.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, that's going to wrap up episode 21 of today's Art City Poker podcast, talking about cash games versus tournaments. If you're brand new to the YouTube channel, go ahead, like, share, and subscribe. Head on over to artcitypoker.com where we have tons of Noma, Texas Hold'em and PLO content for you. And as always, Nick, any parting words for anybody listening?
Uh, no. I mean, it's an interesting topic. If you guys are mainly tournament players and you want to get more involved with cash and you want to be really good at cash, then come over to archcitypoker.com and we will make you world beaters in the cash games. And if you're a cash player and you're looking to explore more into the tournament realm, then there's definitely, I mean, we're not exactly the site for you right now for that, but I think it's worth exploring because it definitely can give you an appreciation for like a different variant of no limit in different situations, and it'll make you a better player. Like you'll have to understand different stack depths and as the blinds and antes go up and defending your big blind, and it's a lot different, and so it's something definitely to kind of give you just a fresh perspective on poker in general, if you will.
Yeah, I'd say right now we're so focused on uploading and providing just a ton of different modules and content for Hold'em, cash games, and PLO. And there's just so many topics. I mean, we're talking our goal. I mean, we loosely talk about it, but in a perfect world, everything goes right. I mean, each subject should have hundreds of videos, hundreds and hundreds of videos. And then I think once we feel as if maybe the Hold'em and the PLO stuff has a really super deep bench to it, maybe that's when maybe we talk about, well, what if we added a tournament section, or maybe we'll start having those discussions. But yeah, Nick, I think I love the topic. I mean, I think we all shoot tournaments and I think we all love cash games. And I think it's just a fun to talk about the two of them together. So yeah, for everybody listening, tune in rather to episode 22 next week. And we'd love to see you, but otherwise have a fantastic rest of your day. And thank you again from archcitypoker.com.